James woke up at 6 in the morning like he always did. The orbital station Meridian hummed around him with the soft sound of machines working. He loved that sound. It meant everything was running correctly. It meant his work was good. He had been working as a mechanic on Meridian for 3 years now. 3 years of fixing ships, solving problems, and spending more time with machines than with people. James did not mind this. Machines made sense. People did not always make sense. His small workshop in Bay 7 was his favorite place in the entire station. The walls were covered with tools. Blueprints hung from every corner. There was a smell of metal and oil that James loved. When he was in his workshop, nothing else mattered. Not his loneliness. Not the fact that he had no family on the station. Not the fact that he spent every evening alone in his quarters reading old books about engineering. That morning, James was working on a small cargo ship's engine when his communicator buzzed. It was Commander Helen from the central hub. Her voice sounded official and serious. "James, I need you in my office in 30 minutes, she said. "This is important." James felt a small worry in his chest. Had he done something wrong? Had something broken because of his work? He cleaned his hands quickly and made his way to the commander's office. The station corridors were busy with people moving between sections. Nobody paid attention to the quiet mechanic walking alone. Commander Helen was sitting behind her desk when James entered. She was a serious woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen many things. She looked at James and gestured for him to sit down. "I have a job for you," she said. "A very important job. A diplomatic job." James felt confused. He was a mechanic, not a diplomat. Diplomats were people who talked to other people. They wore nice clothes and said nice things. James wore work clothes and said only what was necessary. "The Dragon Emperor of Kareth has sent a message," Helen continued. "He wants to make trade agreements with human colonies. It is good for business. It is good for peace. But there is something you need to know." She turned a small holographic projector toward James. An image appeared in the air between them. It was a dragon. But not like the dragons James had seen in old videos. This dragon was different. Her scales were a dull bronze color instead of the bright gold that dragon scales usually were. Her horns were not perfectly matched. One curved in a way that looked strange. She was smaller than other dragons too. Much smaller. "This is Victoria," Helen said. "She is the youngest daughter of the Dragon Emperor. She will be arriving at Meridian tomorrow. The Emperor is sending her as part of the diplomatic exchange. She will stay for 3 months. Why are you showing me this?" James asked quietly. "Because you will be her liaison," Helen said. "You will show her around the station. You will explain how humans live and work. You will make sure she is comfortable." James's eyes became wide. "Me? Commander, I do not talk to people. I fix machines. Why would you ask me to do this?" Helen smiled a little. "Because you are the best mechanic we have. Because you are honest. Because you do not pretend to be something you are not. And because I think you and Victoria might understand each other better than you think." "I do not understand," James said. Helen leaned forward. "In dragon society, appearance matters very much. Dragons believe in perfection. In strength. In beauty. Victoria does not look like a perfect dragon. She looks different. The Emperor sent her here partly as a joke. A joke about humans receiving something that dragon society considers ugly or wrong." James felt something strange in his chest. Anger maybe. Or sadness. He did not know. But he knew he did not like the idea of someone being sent away because they looked different. "I will do it," he said. The next day, James stood in the arrival bay with his heart beating fast. He had tried to prepare himself. He had read information about dragons. He had cleaned his clothes. He had even tried to think of things to say. But nothing felt right. Nothing felt ready. Then the airlock opened. Victoria walked through it. She was smaller than James expected. Her scales caught the light, showing colors of bronze and copper and gold all mixed together. When she moved, there was something strong and graceful about her, even though she was not as large as other dragons. Her eyes were gold and very, very intelligent. She looked at James and he looked at her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. "You are the chief mechanic," Victoria said. Her voice had a musical quality to it, like music played on different notes all at the same time. "I am happy to meet you. I have many questions about human engineering. I have read about it. I find it very fascinating." James had expected her to be cold, to be proud, to be angry about being sent away. He had not expected her to seem interested in anything. He had not expected her to want to learn. "I can show you," James said simply. "If you want to see." "I want to see," Victoria said. I want to understand how your people build things. I want to understand why you build the way you do. In my home we have different ways. But I think your ways might be better. For some things. As they walked through the station, Victoria asked questions. Real questions. Important questions. She did not ask about fancy things or comfortable things. She asked about how systems worked. She asked why humans chose certain materials over others. She asked about safety and protection and failure. James found himself talking more than he had talked in 3 years. And Victoria listened. She really listened. She did not pretend to understand. When she did not know something, she asked more questions. By the time they reached his workshop in Bay 7, James realized something had changed inside him. He had been lonely for a long time. He had not noticed it so much before. But now, talking to Victoria, explaining his work to someone who actually cared about understanding it, he realized how lonely he had been. Victoria looked around his workshop with wonder in her eyes. She ran her claws gently along the blueprints on his walls. She studied the tools hanging from the racks. She looked at the small models of ships and engines that James had built in his spare time. This is beautiful, she said quietly. This is art. This is creation. This is what I want to do. This is what I have always wanted to do. But my father said I was not good enough. That I was not smart enough. That I was too ugly to be a real engineer. James looked at Victoria. He looked at her dull bronze scales and her uneven horns. He looked at her smaller frame and her different appearance. And he saw something completely different from what the Dragon Emperor saw. He saw a brilliant mind. He saw someone who understood things deeply. He saw someone who was brave enough to admit she did not know something and curious enough to want to learn. He saw someone who was not ugly at all. You are good enough, James said. You are very good enough. Victoria's golden eyes became bright, and James realized she was about to cry. But she smiled anyway. Thank you, she said softly. No one has ever said that to me before. James and Victoria spent almost every day together after that first meeting. The station began to feel smaller as they moved through it together. Where James had once walked alone with only his thoughts, now there was someone beside him who asked questions and listened to his answers. Victoria was different from anyone James had ever met. She did not seem to care about the things that other people on the station cared about. She did not care about fancy food or comfortable rooms or entertainment. She cared about understanding. She cared about learning how things worked. One morning, James took her to the engine room. The main reactor sat in the center like a metal heart, pumping power through the entire station. James had spent countless hours maintaining it. He knew every pipe, every valve, every wire. He could have fixed it in complete darkness if he needed to. This is the most important machine on the station, James explained, pointing at the massive reactor. If this stops working, everything stops working. The lights go out. The air becomes bad. The temperature control fails. People could die. Victoria walked around the reactor slowly, studying it from every angle. Her small dragon body moved with careful attention, taking in every detail. Why do you build it this way? She asked, pointing at the layered protection systems around the core. There are walls inside walls. There are backup systems for your backup systems. It seems like too much. Because things break, James said. Humans only live about 80 years. We are fragile creatures. We get sick easily. We can be hurt easily. So we build things that can survive even when parts of them fail. We build with the understanding that nothing lasts forever. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that James had not expected. Dragons build for perfection, she said slowly. We build to last forever. We believe that if we build something perfectly the first time, it will never need to be fixed. My father says that needing repairs means failure. He says that admitting something is broken is weakness. That seems hard, James said. It is hard, Victoria agreed. It is very hard. Because nothing is ever perfect. But we pretend it is. And when things start to fail, we pretend they are not failing. Until suddenly they collapse completely and there is nothing we can do. James thought about this. He had never thought about building in such a way before. He had always assumed that building with backups and safety systems was just smart. But now he understood it was also about accepting that imperfection was real. They spent the next few weeks exploring the station together. James showed Victoria the cargo bay where supplies were stored. He showed her the communication center where messages traveled across vast distances of space. He showed her the medical bay and the living quarters and the observation deck where you could see the stars. But Victoria always wanted to return to the engine room. She wanted to understand how the machines worked. James started bringing her technical manuals. They would sit together in his workshop, and James would explain things while Victoria read the diagrams and asked more questions. Other people on the station began to notice them together. Some people seemed confused. Why was the quiet mechanic spending so much time with the Dragon Princess? Others seemed to understand. They nodded when they saw James and Victoria walking through the corridors together. They smiled sometimes. One evening, James made a mistake that he would remember for the rest of his life. He was tired from working all day. He was thinking about something else. And he said something without meaning to say it. "I like spending time with you," he said to Victoria as they walked back to her quarters. "I like it more than I like spending time with anyone else." The words hung in the air between them. James felt his face become hot. He had not meant to say something so personal. He had not meant to show Victoria how he felt. But Victoria did not laugh. She did not seem uncomfortable. She stopped walking and looked at James with her intelligent golden eyes. "I like spending time with you too," she said. "My whole life people have only seen what is on the outside. They see my scales that are not bright enough. They see my horns that are not perfectly matched. They see a dragon that is not perfect, so they think I am not worth knowing. But you see something different. You see what is inside. You see my mind. You see me." James felt his heart beating very fast. "I do see you," he said. "I see someone very smart. Someone very brave. Someone who is beautiful. Very beautiful." Victoria smiled, and in that moment James forgot about the machines. He forgot about the station. He forgot about everything except the feeling of being truly seen by another person. One night, about a month after Victoria had arrived, James was doing routine maintenance on a secondary cooling system when he noticed something wrong. The readings were not quite right. The temperature was slightly higher than it should be. The pressure was slightly lower. He mentioned it to Victoria when she came to the workshop that evening. "It could be nothing," he said. "Sometimes equipment just needs adjustment. But I want to monitor it closely." Victoria studied the readings over his shoulder. Her small body was close to his, and James could smell the metallic scent that dragons had, like copper and steel mixed together. "I do not like this," Victoria said. "The pattern does not look random. It looks like something is blocking the cooling lines slowly. If it gets much worse, the backup systems might not be able to handle the load." "Let me watch it tonight," James said. "If it gets worse, I will fix it immediately." But it did get worse. Much worse. Around midnight, James was in his quarters sleeping when his emergency communicator started screaming. Alarms. Dangerous alarms. The kind that meant something was very wrong. James ran to the engine room. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. The main reactor temperature was climbing. Climbing fast. Commander Helen was already there with her staff. They looked panicked. A young engineer was trying to figure out what was happening, but he seemed lost and confused. "The cooling system has failed completely," Helen told James. "We are trying to restart the backup, but something is wrong. The backup is not responding." James looked at the readings. His mind worked fast, understanding the problem instantly. The cooling lines were completely blocked. The backup system was trying to work, but there was nowhere for the heat to go. The pressure was building and building. In 15 minutes, maybe 20, the whole reactor could explode. "Get me Victoria," James said. "Now." Victoria arrived in 5 minutes. She was wearing clothes for sleeping, but her eyes were immediately focused and sharp. James explained the problem. He showed her the readings. He showed her what needed to happen. "The main cooling channels are too small for me to fit through," James explained. "But you are smaller. If you go into the secondary conduits, you can reach the blockage. If you can clear it, we can redirect the thermal energy and buy ourselves time." "How much time?" Victoria asked. "Maybe enough," James said. "Maybe." Victoria did not hesitate. She moved to the narrow conduit opening and began to squeeze inside. It was a tight fit even for her smaller body. James guided her through the communication system, telling her where to go, what to look for. The temperature kept climbing. 12 minutes left. Maybe less. Victoria's voice crackled through the communicator. "I see the blockage. It is a mineral deposit. Very hard. I will need to break it apart." "Do it," James said. "We have 10 minutes. The sound of Victoria working echoed through the communicator. Breaking, scratching, pushing. She was using her claws and her strength, trying to break through the blockage that was slowly destroying their station. 7 minutes left. "I have a crack in it," Victoria's voice said, breathing hard. "I am pushing. I am pushing hard." 5 minutes. Then suddenly there was a sound like ice cracking. The blockage broke apart. The cooling liquid came rushing through the pipes, flowing where it needed to go. The temperature gauge began to drop. The pressure began to fall. The alarm stopped screaming. James felt his knees become weak with relief. Victoria climbed out of the conduit, covered in dust and strange metallic fluid. But she was smiling. "We did it," she said, breathing hard. "We saved the station." James looked at Victoria covered in dust and fluid, with her unmatched horns and her bronze scales and her intelligent golden eyes. He looked at this dragon who had just saved everyone on this station, and he realized something that he had already known but was now completely sure about. He loved her. The message from Kareth arrived 3 days after Victoria saved the station. It came through the official communication channel, encrypted in the dragon language. Commander Helen received it first, and her face became very serious. She called James and Victoria to her office immediately. When they arrived, Helen was sitting behind her desk looking like she had not slept. She gestured for them to sit down, but neither of them did. They both understood that something was very wrong. "I received a message from the Dragon Emperor," Helen said slowly. "He has heard about what happened in the engine room. He knows that Victoria prevented a disaster. He knows that she worked with you, James. He knows that she has become important to this station. That is good news, is it not?" Victoria asked, but her voice was uncertain. Helen shook her head. "No, it is not good news. The Emperor is angry. Very angry." She turned the communication screen toward them. There was a message written in human language, translated from dragon speech. James read it carefully. His stomach became tight as he understood the words. The message said that Victoria had become too important. That her success was making the human world notice her. That she was bringing honor to the humans instead of honor to Kareth. The message said that this was shameful. The message demanded that Victoria return to Kareth immediately, or there would be consequences. Consequences? Victoria asked quietly. "The Emperor is threatening military action," Helen said. "He is suggesting that if we do not return you, he will send warships. He is suggesting that we are stealing his daughter. He is suggesting that we are corrupting her with human ideas." James felt anger rise inside him. Hot and powerful anger. "That is not fair," he said. "Victoria came here. She chose to stay. She chose to learn. She is not stolen. She is free." "I know that," Helen said. "But the Dragon Emperor does not see it that way. In his culture, a daughter belongs to her father. Her choices do not matter. Her wishes do not matter. What matters is what the Emperor wants." Victoria was very still. Her golden eyes were looking at something far away, something James could not see. When she finally spoke, her voice was very quiet. "I will not go back," she said. Helen and James both looked at her with surprise. "Victoria, this is serious," Helen said. "The Emperor has military power. He has many ships. If he decides to attack." "I will not go back," Victoria said again, and this time her voice was stronger. "I have spent my entire life in that palace. I have spent my entire life being told that I was not good enough. That I was ugly. That I was a shame to my family. I have spent my entire life hiding in libraries, reading about other worlds, dreaming of being somewhere else. And now I am somewhere else. Now I am doing things that matter. Now I am respected. Now I have found someone who sees me as I truly am." She looked at James when she said these last words. "I will not go back to being nothing," Victoria continued. "I will not go back to being a joke. I will not go back to being invisible." Helen sighed deeply. "If you refuse to return, I can offer you protection under human law. We have a provision called asylum. It means that if you are in danger in your home country, another country can protect you. But it will make things worse with your father. It will make this more serious." "How much more serious?" James asked. "It could mean war," Helen said. "Between humans and dragons." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. War. Real war. Not just angry words but actual fighting. Ships destroying ships. People dying. James felt Victoria's hand reach out and hold his hand. Her scales were warm and smooth. "Then let there be war," Victoria said. "But I will not be sent away like I am nothing. I will not be sent away like I am a joke that has stopped being funny." "I need to think about this," Helen said. "This is a decision that affects the entire station. I need to speak with my superiors. I need to understand what our government wants to do." For the next 3 days, James and Victoria waited. The station felt different. People whispered when they passed by. Some people looked angry. Some people looked scared. Nobody knew if they should be preparing for war or preparing to send Victoria away. James spent almost all his time with Victoria. They went to his workshop and looked at the machines together. They walked to the observation deck and watched the stars. They talked about everything. About their lives. About their dreams. About what they wanted the future to be. "If there is a war because of me," Victoria said one evening, "I will never forgive myself." "If there is a war, it will not be because of you," James said. "It will be because your father is afraid. He is afraid because you are smart. He is afraid because you are successful. He is afraid because you are happy. And he knows that if you are happy living with humans, then his perfect dragon society is not so perfect after all." Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "There might be another way." She looked at James with determination in her golden eyes. "We could prove that working together is better than fighting. We could show that human and dragon cooperation can create something beautiful. Something that neither species could create alone." "How?" James asked. "There is a problem in Kareth," Victoria said. "A very old problem. The capital city has a structural flaw. For 200 years, the best dragon engineers have tried to fix it. They have failed because they think only in dragon ways. They think in tradition. They think in the old methods." She moved to James's workshop table and began to draw. Her claws moved across the paper, making lines and shapes. As she drew, James understood what she was thinking. She was combining dragon engineering knowledge with human innovation. She was creating something new. "If we could solve this problem," Victoria said, "if we could show that human and dragon minds together can accomplish what dragons alone could not accomplish, then perhaps your father would see value in peace." "Do you think it will work?" James asked. "I do not know," Victoria said honestly. "But it is worth trying. It is worth fighting for. Not with weapons but with minds. Not with war but with creation." They worked together for 5 days and 4 nights. James brought technical materials. Victoria brought dragon engineering knowledge. They designed a solution that used human safety principles combined with dragon structural strength. They created something that neither species would have created alone. When it was finished, Victoria recorded a message to her father. She explained the design. She explained how it combined human and dragon knowledge. She explained that this was what the future could be if they chose cooperation instead of war. Helen sent the design through official channels to the Dragon Emperor. For 3 days there was silence from Kareth. Then a response came. Not a threat. Not a demand. An acknowledgement. The Dragon Emperor had shown the design to his senior engineers. They were studying it. They were interested. Victoria held James's hand when they heard the news. She was trembling but she was smiling. "It might work," she said. "It might actually work." James pulled her close. He did not care about the design anymore. He did not care about the Dragon Emperor. He only cared that Victoria was here. That she had chosen to stay. That she had chosen him. "It will work," James said. "Because you are brilliant. And because together we are stronger than apart." Victoria looked up at him and in that moment, everything changed. Everything became possible. Everything became real. 2 weeks passed and the Dragon Emperor's silence continued. James felt like he was living between 2 moments. One moment was the present, where he and Victoria worked together, where they planned, where they hoped. The other moment was the future, uncertain and dangerous. He did not know which moment would become real. Commander Helen called a meeting with the station's senior staff. James and Victoria were invited. The meeting room was large, with screens showing data and information. Helen stood at the front, looking tired but determined. "The Dragon Emperor has approved a joint project," Helen announced. "He wants human and dragon engineers to work together on the structural problem in Kareth's capital city. It is a test. If this works, it could change everything between our species. If it fails, we are back where we started." James looked at Victoria. She was standing very straight, her golden eyes focused and bright. He could see the excitement in her but also the fear. This project would decide everything. Their future. The station's future. Possibly the future of peace between species. "We are assigning a team," Helen continued. "James, you will lead the human engineers. Victoria, you will work with the dragon engineers. You will coordinate the project from Kareth. You will have 3 months to create a detailed plan that the Dragon Emperor will approve." James felt his heart drop. 3 months. Victoria would have to return to Kareth. She would have to go back to the palace, back to her father, back to the place that had made her feel like she was nothing. Victoria looked at him. She did not say anything, but James could see in her eyes that she understood. She was scared too. But she was also brave. The next day Victoria had to prepare to leave. She packed her few belongings. She said goodbye to the people on the station who had become her friends. She spent most of her last night in James's workshop, sitting quietly while he worked on a small engine. "I do not want to leave you," Victoria said softly. "I do not want you to leave either," James said. "But this is important. This could change everything." "What if my father tries to keep me there?" Victoria asked. "What if he does not let me come back?" James stopped working and looked at her. "He will let you come back. Because you are going to be brilliant. You are going to solve this problem. And when you do, your father will see that you are valuable. He will see that you are not a shame. He will see that you are exactly what he should have wanted all along." Victoria's eyes became shiny with tears. "What if I fail?" "You will not fail," James said. "You have never failed at anything that matters. And this matters. So you will not fail." Victoria left on a dragon transport ship the next morning. James stood in the observation deck and watched her ship disappear into the darkness of space. He felt very alone. The weeks that followed were difficult. James threw himself into his work. He gathered the best human engineers on the station. They began studying the structural problem in Caritha's capital city. They analyzed the data that Victoria sent. They looked at the design she had created with James. Slowly they began to understand what needed to be done. On the other side of space, Victoria was working too. She was in her father's palace, surrounded by dragon engineers who looked at her with confusion and suspicion. They did not understand why the Emperor had approved this project. They did not understand why a flawed dragon like Victoria was leading it. But Victoria was not thinking about them. She was thinking about James. She was thinking about the station. She was thinking about proving that she deserved to be respected. She sent messages to James regularly. Long messages explaining what she was doing. What the dragon engineers thought. What problems she was discovering. James would read her messages in his workshop at night, and he would feel less alone. One message said, "The dragon engineers do not believe that human methods can work here. They say that human engineering is too simple. Too basic. I told them that human engineering is not simple. It is elegant. It solves problems without wasting resources. They did not believe me. But I am going to show them." Another message said, "My father watched a presentation today. I explained the joint design. I explained how human and dragon knowledge combined would create something neither of us could create alone." He said nothing. But he did not leave the room. He listened to everything I said. I think maybe, just maybe, he is beginning to understand. After 6 weeks, Victoria sent a message that was different from all the others. It was shorter. It said, "I miss you. I miss the station. I miss my workshop. I miss you." James read that message 50 times. 2 months into the project, something amazing happened. Victoria sent a complete design. It was beautiful. It combined the strength and permanence that dragons valued with the flexibility and safety that humans valued. It was not purely dragon engineering. It was not purely human engineering. It was something new. Something that only Victoria and James together could have created, even though they were on opposite sides of space. The design arrived at the station. James studied it with the other engineers. They checked the calculations. They looked at the structural analysis. They studied every detail. "This is perfect," one engineer said. "I have never seen anything like this." "It is not perfect," James said. "It is better than perfect. It is practical. Will work. And it will last." Commander Helen sent the design to the Dragon Emperor for final approval. The response came within 2 days. Not just approval. Excitement. The Dragon Emperor wanted to begin construction immediately. He was calling it a historic moment. A new beginning for dragon and human cooperation. But there was one condition. The Dragon Emperor wanted Victoria and James to come to Carith. He wanted them to oversee the construction together. He wanted the human and the dragon who had created this design to stand together as it became real. Victoria returned to the station after 78 days away. James saw her ship arrive, and he ran to the arrival bay. When she walked through the airlock, she looked different. She looked stronger. She looked like someone who had fought a battle and won. When she saw James, she smiled. That smile was everything. "I told them about you," Victoria said as James moved toward her. "I told all the engineers about the quiet mechanic who sees things that no one else sees. I told them that together we could do anything." "And did they believe you?" James asked. "Eventually," Victoria said. "My father believed me. The engineers believed me. And now we are going to prove it. Together. On Carith. In front of everyone." James reached out and touched her face gently. Her scales were warm. Her eyes were looking at him with such intensity that he felt like he was melting. "I love you," he said. The words felt small and fragile, but they were true. I love you too, Victoria said. I have loved you since the day you said I was good enough. No one had ever said that before. No one had ever believed it. But you did. 3 days later, they stood together on a transport ship heading toward Kareth. James looked out at the stars and thought about how far he had come from his small workshop. Victoria stood beside him, her hand in his. Below them, the planet Kareth was growing larger. Soon they would arrive. Soon they would begin construction on something that would change everything. Soon they would show the entire Dragon Empire that a flawed princess and a quiet mechanic could create beauty together. The proving ground was waiting. The capital city of Kareth was nothing like James had imagined. The buildings were enormous, carved from stone that seemed to glow with an inner light. The sky above was a deep purple color. The streets were wide and empty, lined with dragons who had come to watch the human and dragon engineers begin their work. James felt very small standing in the middle of that city. He was surrounded by creatures 10 times his size. He was surrounded by traditions that had existed for thousands of years. But Victoria was beside him, and that made him brave. The structural flaw was in the oldest part of the city. A massive bridge that connected the north and south districts had been cracking slowly for 2 centuries. Dragon engineers had tried to fix it many times. Each time they used the same old methods. Each time it failed. The bridge was now so damaged that the Dragon Emperor had closed it completely. Trade between the 2 districts had become difficult. James and Victoria stood before the bridge with a team of human engineers and a team of dragon engineers. The dragon engineers looked skeptical. They crossed their massive arms and looked at the small human mechanic with doubt in their eyes. Victoria stepped forward. She was smaller than all of them, but she spoke with confidence. "We are not here to do what has been done before," she said. "We are not here to use the old methods. We are here to try something new. Something that no dragon engineer has tried alone. Something that no human engineer could have designed alone. But together we can do this." An old dragon named Tarek stepped forward. He had been leading the dragon engineering teams for 50 years. He looked at Victoria with eyes that had seen many failures. "The problem with the bridge is that it was built too perfectly," Tarek said. "The original architects believed that if they built it perfectly, it would never crack. But stone cracks. It moves. It changes. And when it changes, the perfect design breaks completely." "Exactly," James said. "That is why we have designed it differently. We are going to add flexibility to the bridge. We are going to add systems that can move with the stone, not against it. We are going to accept that the stone will change, and we are going to build something that can survive that change." Tarek studied the design that Victoria and James had created. His expression did not change. But he did not reject it immediately, which was something. "Show me," he said finally. For the next 3 weeks, James and the human engineers worked alongside the dragon engineers. The human engineers taught the dragons about flexibility and redundancy. The dragon engineers taught the humans about strength and permanence. Slowly they began to understand each other. James found himself working 18 hours a day. He would wake up in the morning in the small quarters they had given him and go directly to the construction site. He would work until his muscles ached and his mind felt foggy. Then he would sleep and do it again. Victoria worked alongside him. When James was explaining human engineering principles to the dragon engineers, Victoria was translating not just words but concepts. When the dragon engineers were teaching the humans about dragon construction methods, Victoria was helping them understand the deeper reasons behind those methods. One afternoon, James made a discovery. He was examining the deepest part of the bridge's foundation when he saw something unusual. The stone underneath the bridge was not as solid as everyone thought. There was a layer of softer rock beneath the harder stone. This was why the bridge kept cracking. Every time there was movement in the earth below, the bridge would shift and crack. He called Victoria over immediately. "This is the real problem," James said, pointing at the softer rock. "The bridge cannot be fixed by just repairing the top. The foundation itself is unstable." Victoria looked at the rock carefully. Then she looked at James. "We need to rebuild the foundation. We need to add supports that go deeper. Supports that can move with the earth below." "That will take more time," James said. "That will cost more resources." "But it will work," Victoria said. "It will really work. Not just for a few years. For centuries." They presented this discovery to Tarek and the other dragon engineers. For a long moment, nobody said anything. Then Tarek nodded slowly. "The human would have discovered this eventually," Tarek said. "But it would have taken him months. The dragon engineers would never have discovered this at all. We would have continued trying to repair the surface, wondering why it kept breaking. Together, you discovered the real problem in hours." The reconstruction began immediately. New plans were made. New materials were brought to the site. The human and dragon engineers worked together, combining their knowledge and their methods. James designed the flexible support system. The dragon engineers provided the strength and precision to build it. Weeks turned into months. The construction site became a place where something extraordinary was happening. More and more dragons came to watch. Young dragons especially. They looked at the human engineers and the dragon engineers working side by side. They looked at Victoria, the princess that their society had rejected, now leading this amazing project. One day, a group of young dragons approached James while he was working on the support system. They asked him questions. They asked him about human engineering. They asked him why humans thought differently than dragons. They asked him if he thought dragons could learn human methods. Of course, James said. You are intelligent. You can learn anything. The question is not whether you can learn. The question is whether you are willing to change the way you think. Change is scary. But change is also how we grow. The young dragons listened carefully. James could see something shifting in their eyes. An openness to new ideas. A willingness to question tradition. 6 months into the construction, the new foundation was complete. The flexible support systems were in place. The bridge began to take on a new shape. It was still strong like a dragon bridge should be. But it was also flexible like a human bridge should be. It was something beautiful that neither species would have created alone. The Dragon Emperor came to see the bridge. He was an enormous dragon with scales of brilliant gold and silver. He looked at the construction with an expression that James could not read. Victoria stood beside her father. James could see her holding her breath. The Emperor looked at the bridge for a very long time. Then he looked at Victoria. Then he looked at James. This is not what I expected, the Emperor said finally. His voice was deep and powerful and filled the entire construction site. I expected failure. I expected this human and this flawed dragon to prove that cooperation was impossible. But instead, you have created something that my best engineers could not create in 200 years. The Emperor turned to face the watching dragons. I have been wrong, he said. I have believed that perfection was strength. But I see now that perfection is weakness. Perfection cannot adapt. Perfection cannot change. This bridge is not perfect. But it is strong. It is beautiful. And it will last. He looked back at Victoria. You are not flawed, my daughter. Your differences are your strength. I have been blind. When the bridge was finally complete, the entire city came to celebrate. Dragons and humans stood together as the Emperor ceremonially opened the bridge for trade. The bridge gleamed in the purple light of Caritha's sky. It was magnificent. Victoria and James stood together on the highest point of the bridge. Below them, dragons walked across, testing the new structure. Their traders moved between the north and south districts for the first time in months. We did it, Victoria said softly. We did, James agreed. But something even more important had happened. Young dragons began asking questions about human engineering. They began studying human methods. Some of them even started working with human engineers on other projects. The rigid traditions of dragon society began to shift. Change was coming. Within a year, Victoria was appointed Chief Engineer of Interspecies Innovation. She was given resources to establish research facilities where humans and dragons could work together on problems that neither species could solve alone. James became the head of human engineering operations. The ugly daughter that the Dragon Emperor had sent as a joke became his greatest legacy. Not because she had proven herself superior, but because she had proven that difference was valuable. That innovation came from combining different perspectives. That the future belonged to those who dared to be different. When Victoria returned to the palace, it was not as an exile or a disgrace. It was as a hero. Her asymmetrical horns and bronze scales, once marks of shame, became symbols of progress and innovation. James stood beside her in the grand hall, human and dragon together. He watched as young dragons lined up to ask Victoria questions. He watched as the future began to take shape. And in that moment he understood that the greatest love story was not about two individuals. It was about how those two individuals could change the world. The Emperor's joke had become the foundation of a new future.